Hey everybody! So I have the day off work today, and the reason why I had the day off work is because I was up late last night at the movie theater, and I went to a marathon event at my local independent theater called the Tower Theater, and this was an event called Where's My Hoverboard? And it was put on to celebrate Back to the Future Day. If you didn't know, then yesterday was the day that in Back to the Future 2 that Marty and Doc go to in the future. And so October 21st, 2015. And so they had at the Tower Theater, put on by the Salt Lake Film Society, they had a marathon event viewing all three films. It was really fun. They had like a food truck there. They had activities and prizes and different things going on. And I always love like being a part of that kind of fan experience at the movies, because it's just different than any other kind of experience, because people are cheering, people are laughing, people are excited, maybe dressed in cosplay. So the first movie, of course, all three movies are directed by Robert Zemeckis, and he had producing help from Steven Spielberg, and it was written by Zemeckis and Bob Gale. And of course, we have music by Alan Silvestri, and he did amazing job with the music. It's just, of course, it's such a cliche to say iconic, but it really is iconic music in all three films. And I like how there's just slight variations in all three films for Silvestri. Reason why I think most people like the first one the best is because it is such a tight script. And they do a really good job that the other two don't do of keeping the story really small. It's really about five people. You've got Doc Brown, you've got Marty, you've got Lorraine, you've got George, and you've got Biff. So there's five people that are involved in the first one. You'll have other minor characters like Strickland and some of the other people in Hill Valley, but for the most part, it's just about those five characters and getting George and Lorraine to fall in love. That's the main point. And so it's a small goal, and that works definitely best in time travel, because time travel has such ripple effects, and it works best if you're just dealing with one choice, one decision, one thing that you can then go back and change. The first one, of course, is about Marty and Doc. Doc shows Marty this time machine that he has created, and Marty ends up going back to 1955. Marty ends up meeting his parents in 1955, and he ends up kind of messing things up, so it's not for sure whether they're going to meet or not. And there's this big dance where they're supposed to meet and fall in love, and that sort of sends that ripple effect of would he even be born? Would he even exist? And so he has to find a way to kind of put his parents back together. So entertaining, and Michael J. Fox is so charming. Of course, we love Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown, although it is a little bit strange of why the two of them are friends. He seems a lot closer to Doc Brown than he is to his parents. So it's sort of weird, but you just kind of go with it. You have to go with it. And they have a really nice chemistry, the two of them together. And of course, he ends up meeting up with 1955 Doc Brown. And so that's really fun. And it's just it's a very simple time travel story, but it's so tight. It's so well performed. It's got so much charm. And it's got real heart, this idea of coming into sort of contact with your parents when they're teenagers and realizing they're not that different from yourself is just a really human, lovely concept. And also, there's sort of this, there's a little bit of an Oedipal complex in here, where his mother is kind of in love with him, and he's also a little bit turned on, which is sort of interesting. There's some more adult themes in there, but overall it's just an entertaining blockbuster. One of the best. If I was going to make a list of my top 10 blockbuster, fun, enjoyable movies, this would certainly be on that list. Let's talk about number 2. So number 2 is, I think, the weakest of the three, just because I think they get a little too Biff heavy into and it just ends up feeling kind of mean, and it's just not fun like the first one is. It's not bad. I like it. I would probably give it like a B minus, because I do think it becomes too big and loses that small feel to it, because you're going to the future and you go back to 1985 and it's this crazy version where Biff is this Donald Trump type character. I feel like it loses some of its charm, and have a lot of plot holes in the second one that you don't necessarily have in the first one, because the first one is, like I said, all about 5 people. But now since Biff becomes this Donald Trump character, that it starts to get, all of a sudden he owns all these companies, and you're just involving way more people in sort of this time travel thing. And so the space-time continuum is, as Doc Brown likes to say, is getting very, very murky. And not only are you making changes you're making changes in 1985, alternative 1985, but also in 2015, and then you go back to 1955 and you see stuff from the original movie, which I think kind of makes it feel like, oh, I wish I was back in that original movie. And you don't have any Crispin Glover in 2, and it's just not as satisfying as 1 is by any stretch, but it's still like a decent movie. It's still entertaining. My favorite part of 2 is going into the future and seeing all of the sort of gadgets and technology and the other things. Of course, it's sort of crazy that they thought that things would change that much in 30 years. There's so much Biff. You've got the old Biff, you've got the young Biff in 2015, you've got the Biff in the alternate in 1985, you've got the pacifist Biff in regular 1985, and you have things like them just like leaving Jennifer there on the porch, like that's really weird, and so yeah, 2 is I think the weakest of the 3. And then 3, we get this weird film where they go back to the Old West, and it's a very like Hollywood version of the Old West. This is no like Deadwood or something like that. This is a very like movie set, movie prop version of the Old West. And I think we also, even though it's Buford Tanner and Tannen, I think we get a little too much Biff in this as well. I don't know, it just starts to be kind of predictable and just not as charming, but I think it's helped by the fact that you get the love story between steam versions of Clara and Doc Brown, and that's really sweet and nice, and I like seeing them together, and I think there are some pretty good jokes, through the Clint Eastwood, and I don't know why in 2 and 3 all of a sudden they added this element of Marty and his temper and this whole chicken thing. Like, that's not in the first one, so I don't know why they did that, but you kind of have that he sort of learns his lesson of controlling his temper. It's a silly, very fluffy movie, but I think it does stay smaller than 2, or just about a handful of people again. I don't really like the ending, because I think it just sort of goes from being something that feels within the world of this story feels plausible, but the idea that Doc Brown could build a locomotive time machine in 1885 out of steam power feels a little ridiculous. Scene on the locomotive when they are, trying to get it up to 88 miles per hour, I think that's really well done. I think it's pretty exciting. I think there's some other sort of Old West scenes that are done pretty well, and it's a pretty well written script as far as some of the humor and everything. So overall, I think the 3 is entertaining, but I think it's silly and not like a great movie. But I think the first one is a great film. Like I said, if I was making a list of blockbuster films, it would maybe actually be in my top 5. So let me know what you think about the Back to the Future. I just want to say thank you to Salt Lake Film Society for putting this all on. And it was just a wonderful event, and I'm really glad to have been a part of it. Thanks so much, and please subscribe to my channel, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.